Right, so welcome to the second part of IDE training. In the first part we saw how XPaths are used, what commands are, what targets are, assertions are. In the second part we'll be focusing on extensions, how to use pre-built extensions and how to make your own user extensions. Right, before I jump over to user extensions, let us see what extensions are. Alright, for example, this is Selenium IDE. This is the core functionality of Selenium IDE. It's an open source tool and anybody can add on to it. Okay, so you can add some parts of your coding to IDE. These are known as extensions. Right. When you add this, what happens is that in Selenium IDE, in the commands section, right, you have certain commands. If you add an extension, you can add commands in this. Okay, now IDE is completely JavaScript based. It's a tool which is made in JavaScript. All the commands are in JavaScript. JavaScript and Java are little different. Okay, I will talk about that in detail. Right, first of all, let us see how many types of extensions are there. There are two types of extensions. Ones which are already available, readily available on the Selenium website or something. Alright, and second type of user extensions are some extensions which you need to make using the language JavaScript. Okay, so the second type is dependent on your application. The first types, they are readily available. Let us talk about the first type of user extensions. Right, for example, in IDE we know that there are no commands for executing a if statement or a while loop. There are no commands, but we can use an extension from the website of Selenium, which is seleniumhq.org. You can go over here and you'll see a download section and the documentation. Go to documentation and you scroll down, you will see the link sequence of evaluation and flow control. Go over here and under that you'll have to install Go Selenium IDE extension. This is one of the extensions which helps you to introduce looping and statements in IDE. So if you go to look at the page, you click on this page link over here, you go to this page 51 Elliot, and down out here you will see that hold on, yeah, this is the GitHub URL for accessing this particular extension. You go to this GitHub URL and you can download the extension from here. Okay, you can download the zip file. Hold on. Right, and I have it downloaded. Okay, I'll open it in my I'll keep it in my F drive in a new folder known as IDE, and I'll keep the file and I'll extract it. Right, when I extract it, I get this sideflow.js file. This is a JavaScript file. Okay, if I edit it, you will not be able to understand anything in it. We will be making such files in coming time, right, in coming tutorials. Right, so this file has got various functions. I would request you to install an editor known as Edit Plus. Okay, Edit Plus editor helps you to actually modify JavaScript and all, make JavaScript commands. So you can go to editplus.com and please install the Edit Plus for your OS, whichever it is. Right, for normal Windows you can download this one. Okay, now once you download it, install it, when you right click on it, you'll get the option Edit Plus. You open it with Edit Plus, you'll get it like this, and it might ask you for license and all. You can click on evaluation version. Right, so to learn in the beginning, it's okay, you can use that editor. So this file which you have downloaded, sideflow.js JavaScript file, it's got various functions inside it. Functions like You can say do while, it's a while loop, do end while, end of while loop, right? So it's got various things which we can use. This is an extension. This is an extension to the existing features of Selenium IDE. If you want to look at the existing features of Selenium IDE, you can look at this URL. What do you mean by existing features? I want to say that if you want to go to this link, the first link, this particular link, if you go over here, you just go to Google and type selenium.prototype.do type. I'll tell you why did I type it. You'll get the first link over here. This is the source code of Selenium IDE. The source code of Selenium IDE holds functions which we have just seen. For example, assertion functions, right? Then you have a function like do, a function like type. The type function which we use in IDE, right? When we write the type function, okay, what happens is that, or when you use the click function, these are the JavaScript functions of IDE which are built inside IDE. These functions are called, okay, for example, when I use the click command, then this function do click is command which do click is called, which clicks on the element based on the locator which you send inside the function. Now apart from these functions, you can add on more functions in IDE, right, like this, by downloading this extension. Okay, so what you need to do with this extension is that you need to include this extension in IDE, right? What you need to do is you can go to IDE and hold on, before that just a minute, I'll go to my IDE folder, and this is the extension, right? We generally name this file as user extensions. Fine, this is just an industry convention. If you want to, you can ignore renaming it, you can just let it be like this, but generally it is known as this. So you need to include this user extension inside Selenium IDE, then only you will get those commands present in Selenium IDE. So you can go to options and you can browse for the extension, and you can add this extension in IDE. Click on OK, and then you'll have to restart your IDE. Okay, you'll have to go to tools, IDE again. Now you will get the functions in that IDE, in that particular extension. Whatever those functions were there, those will be present in IDE. For example, if I type over here while, I'll get a while loop over here. So while loop was not present earlier inside IDE, now it is present. So we can use various functions of this extension, right, and we can do a lot of things. Let us study those now, but before I tell you those things, okay, let me tell you very simple stuff, that is few commands in IDE which are important. Okay, before I jump over to extensions. So what I have done is that I have taken a pre-built extension. I have not made my extension. I will be making my extension to read the data and all. That will be in the coming classes. So let's start with easier things. Right, let's study few basic commands which are used in IDE. For example, there is a command known as store. It's the part of IDE only. Okay, it is not in extension. Right, store command helps you to store a value in a variable. For example, I want to store 100 in variable A. So in the value section you will have the variable A and you will have 100. So what will happen is that this 100 will be stored inside A. In the next line, if I type over here echo, and if I type only A, right, if I run this code, in the log it will print only A. It will not print the value of A. I want 100 to be printed. So you need to write in this case echo dollar in the curly brackets, you can print A. So when you run it, it will print 100. Okay. So similarly, you can use store function again and again to store different values in different variables. And if you have to use those values, you can simply say echo dollar. Right now I have stored in B, so I'll put the value of B, and when I run it, it will print the value of A and B. Now what happens is that all these values, when they are stored inside Selenium IDE, okay, right, if you look at the source code of IDE, this is the source code of IDE. Okay, in this source code, no, it's not available over here. Okay, it's fine. In this source code, there is a variable, or there is an array in Selenium IDE in which all these values are stored. A, B, whatever variables you have, all the variables are stored inside a particular array in IDE. The name of that array is stored varies. This is the name of that particular array. You can also access that particular array directly and print the value of the variables. The command which you need to give is that you need to write echo, and you need to write JavaScript in the brackets stored vars V capital, in the single quotes you write B, and you write this. So this will also give you the same result, right? If I run like this, unterminated, okay, sorry, this has to be single quote, fine. So when I run like this, it also prints 25. So this command and this command, they are same, but only difference is that I want to tell you that there is an array known as stored vars, which stores the value of all the variables. In the array you need to just put the variable name and it will get you the variable name. Fine. Similarly, if I have another command like store, and I write over here $BC. Right. So what does this mean? That was some error. It's okay. This means that the value of B will be stored inside the variable C. So on the next line, if I write over here echo $C and I run this program, so you will see that it prints echo, okay, the bracket, fine. You can also write like this, the value of C is, and it will get the value. You can also write it like this. So when you run it, it will print the value of C is 25. So I'm telling you about these variables is because before I start using if statements, while loops, in the loops and all, you need to have variables, right? A counter which can be incremented or something. So that's why I'm telling you. What if I have to increment the value of C? How do I do that? Okay, so a normal person would say that you can simply write echo, and then you can write $C plus 1. Okay, right. Normally you would say this. If I run this thing, okay, it will just print 25 plus 1. It will not print 26. Right. So what you need to do is that you need to write something like store eval. Okay, what is store eval? Look, I have given this command over here, JavaScript stored vars B. From the stored variable array, I need to get B, but I have to write JavaScript over here. There is another command known as store eval. That means evaluate the stored variable. Okay, right. And you just write over here stored vars. I suppose I write C. Right, that means that fire the JavaScript command on this particular variable. Right, what will happen is that in this case you don't need to actually write JavaScript. Okay, store the value of variable C into say variable Q. Fine. On the next line I can write echo and then $Q. So when I run this code, right, it prints the value of Q, okay, which is 25 again. Okay, you can also write over here Q is and run it. So this store eval function or the store eval command helps us to not write JavaScript and all that stuff. Now if you have to increase the value of C by 1, okay, now C is a string. Basically it's not a number, it's a string. So if you want to increase the value of C by 1 and store it somewhere and print the number, then you will have to use the command first of all store eval, right. Then in the target you need to write new number. Okay, you need to create the object of the JavaScript class number, and in that you need to write stored vars. From the stored vars get me the value of C. Okay, so eval will, what it will do, it will evaluate this using JavaScript. Okay, it will get the stored vars array and it will get you the value of C, convert it into number as well, and then suppose if I have to add 10 into it and store it in the number in the variable X. So this will be evaluated from the stored vars array. The value of C would be retrieved, it will be converted to a number and a 10 will be added to it and result will be stored in X, and after that I can use the command echo $X, right. So I can write over here X is this much, and when I run this command it prints X is 35. So a 10 increment of 10 is done with C. So when we write a loop and when we have to increment and all in IDE, we have to do like this. I know it's a pain, but you know, it's a tool, it's its own feature, it's its own way of doing stuff. Okay, so we studied about store command, store eval, in which you don't have to write JavaScript and all that stuff. It can directly get the values from stored vars array, and we saw how to increment and all. Right, now about using the extension which we had just added in the options. Right, so we'll be using these commands in that, and please note that you, after adding the path of the user extensions, right, you restart your IDE, otherwise the user extension commands will not be detected. Okay, so all the user extensions are made in JavaScript. Whatever user extensions we'll also make during the coming cycles of learning, right, or the classes, we will also make the user extensions like these. So let us study how to use the pre-built user extensions first. So to help you know more about user extensions, let me talk about this extension which we have just downloaded. Right, the only thing is that after downloading the user extension from the previous URL which I gave you, right, you have to go in the options and you have to include this user extension. Alright, and when you restart your IDE, you will get the commands. Okay, for example, in this user extension there is a command known as while. Okay, it signifies the while loop, obviously, right. And how do we use a while loop from this user extension? Right, if you look at this user extension code, you will see the do while function which implements the while loop, and you have to send some condition inside this function. Right, to implement this you'll have to first store a variable, because while loop works on a variable, of some variable has to be incremented or something, right. Store say 0 in the variable I. So in the variable I have stored 0, and I'll write a while loop while you can say $I is less than 10. So you're giving this condition that till the time the value of I is less than 10, you have to print the value of I, and then in the next line you can write that you have to increment. Okay, for incrementing we had seen the command store eval, right? Okay, because you have to convert this I into a number first. Okay, and then add 1 to it. Okay, so you'll have to write over here new number, and in that you will have to write stored vars from the stored variables, get me the value of I and add 1 to it, and store the result back into I. Sorry, I don't know what was that error, but yes, new number, increment the value of I, get it from stored vars, and add 1 to it and store the result back into I. Fine, and then in the last line you can write and while. Right, so when you run this code, if you look at the logs, and it's working, in between also you can, what you can do is that you can print the value of I. You can write echo $I, right? So when you run this code now, fine, you see that 9, 8, 7, so it is incrementing and it will print the values from 0 to 9. So these commands, okay, commands like while loops and all, these are not there in IDE. You have to get them from the extension. Moreover, you can also have conditional statements, go to if. Okay, for example, I'll add a first command called as say go to if. Fine, go to if statement takes in some condition and a label to which you should move your control to. Okay, for example, I'll write go to if target 14 greater than 5 and label A. In the value you write A. A is known as a label. Fine, and over here in the last line of the code I'll write the command label and I'll give the name A. And second line I'll write over here echo label A. Fine. So what does this mean? This means that this is the condition for if statement. If this condition is true, then you have to move the control to the label A. So if this condition is true, then the control will directly move to the line with the label A. Okay, if I run this code, you will see that only label A is printing. These lines, they never got executed for the while loop because this condition got true. If I would have written target 14 greater than 15, right, and I would have executed this, I would have got output till number 9 and also label A would be printed. Okay, because this condition is not true, it will not go to that line, so it will execute all these lines in the serial way including the label line as well. That is why label A gets printed over here. Okay, right, so go to if statement is also important, while loop is important. So all these are pre-built control flow statements inside the extension which I used inside this particular extension. Okay, right. Now what I can do is that I can also have my own customary functions inside it. What do you mean by own customary functions? For example, I'll keep a function known as selenium.prototype.do. You can write over here print name. Okay, and I'll not pass anything inside this function. Okay, and I can have this function which simply prints some name or something. I can write over here alert, say hello, my name is Henry, something like this. Okay, so this is the alert box which will come up when you call this function. You save this file, make sure you save it, okay, and you open up IDE, fine, close IDE, okay, all these commands I hope you have understood, okay, go to store while I'll save this test case, hold on, I'll save this test case in F drive IDE and a new folder, Selenium IDE code. The download link for the complete code including IDE frameworks and all everything, okay, is in your account. When you log in into qtpselenium.com, you will see the download link. So this is flow control and you can save it. Fine. Now I'll close my IDE because I've changed this file. I'll have to restart my IDE. Okay, I'll go to tools, Selenium IDE, and I will click over here. Now I will see the name, print name command. So what IDE does is that it automatically includes the command print name and wait. This would have the same wait for page to load effect which was having earlier, right? Because if there is some delay in loading the page, script should not stop, right? But this print name function is a simple function, right? When I run this script, see, you get the message, hello, my name is Henry. It comes up from this alert message inside this function. So you can make functions like these, you can put up logics in them, it's also possible, right? For example, I have my Salesforce web application page opened up over here. I want to write a script which enters a random email ID inside this text field. Suppose this is the requirement that I have to write a script which will generate a random email ID and insert the email ID in this text box, right? So you can do that, okay. You can make a function known as selenium.prototype.do generate a random email, right? This function will generate a random email ID and it will type inside the text field. How will it do it? Okay, how will you do this function? Right, it's very simple. Well, first of all, let me increase the font size, I guess. Right, so I think this is more clear. Okay, do generate random email. It's very easy to use. Okay, I have this function ready with me. I'll take it from here. Look, I take a variable text equals to blank in the beginning. Then I take a variable possible and I write all A to Z in uppercase, A to Z in lowercase and all the numbers inside this variable. Okay, then we write a for loop. Okay, for variable I equals to 0, I less than 5, I plus, okay, I'm running this for loop 5 times and every time I run this loop, I will pull out a particular character from this particular string. Okay, char at mat.random. I'm using mat.random functions and all which will pick up any random number, any random character from this string and append it to the text. And in the end, we will have the random email IDs text appended by say @gmail.com. So this loop will run for 5 times and pick up 5 random characters from the string possible. Okay, and it will append them to the text. Fine. Since we have made this function, we need to restart my IDE. I'll have to restart it. Right. And I'll have the function generate. Make sure you write G in the lowercase over here. Okay. Although G will be written in the uppercase over here. Alright. So generate random email function. Right. And if I call it, see that it is printing random email IDs. It's just printing random 5 characters. If you want to increase the number of characters, you can increase the value over here to 10, then it will take up 10 characters. Okay, right. So you need to type this email ID into this particular text field. Okay, so you can take the XPath of this text field. This is the XPath. Fine. And you can write over here Selenium. The Selenium object is by default inside user extensions, right? And you can call the function do type. Okay, the type function is already there in IDE, right? Type. Fine. So the corresponding function in the script would be do type, right? Because all the functions, they are starting with the letter do. Okay, so you call that function type, pass over the XPath into it and the email ID which you want to type inside that, the random text followed by Gmail. So this function will go and type right inside the text field. So I have changed my script, so I will have to restart my IDE, right? And I'll give the command over here, generate random email. So if I run this command, you see that a random email address is typed. So every time I run my command, okay, every time I run the test, a random email ID would be typed inside this text field. Okay, right. So I hope you got my point that how user extensions work, how you can make your own functions in user extensions as well. Right. Now similar to this, I have made my own user extension which will help you read from XML file. This is one of the this is a very important user extension which I have made. Okay, this user extension, yeah, this user extension helps you to read the data from the XML file. Okay, what I have done is I have added few functions on the top of flow control XML. Okay, right, this XML has also got the flow control statements like go to label and while loop and all. Okay, apart from that, I have added a command, a function known as do load test data. So this will load the test data from the XML. You have to provide the correct path of XML over here. In my case, I have the XML file like this. Right, I'll open this XML in Chrome. Fine. And you see that there are 3 test cases. The data for 3 test cases is inside the test data tags, login test, create lead and delete lead. If you look at the login test has got 2 data sets inside it. Okay, one is this, that is, this is the username, this is the password, and the result is login success. That means you should be able to log in. And the second data set is this username password, and with this user ID password you should not be able to log in. Okay, right. So what you will do is that you will read the username passwords from this particular XML and execute the login test as many times as there are number of user IDs and passwords in this XML. Right, so this test will be executed 2 times. Tomorrow if I add a new test data to it, the third one, so the test should automatically execute 3 times, right? You should not be changing the code in IDE. Okay, so the logic has to be written in such a way. Now to read the XML files, how do you read this XML file? You have to learn XML reading. Okay, go to W3 Schools and hold on, just go to Google and type XML reading W3 Schools. So you go to the first link over here, right? It's XML DOM tutorial. It tells you how to write the code, the JavaScript code to read the XML. Fine. Okay, right. So this is how you can do it. Or you can go to XML reading JavaScript. You can be more precise over here. Yeah, this is the code only. This is the link. It tells you everything. Okay, XML validator, XML XPath, XSLT, everything it will tell you. Right, sorry. Now, what I did, I studied from this link and I made these functions. Okay, you can download this code from your account as well. Right, if you log into QTP Selenium, you can download the code. And over here, this is a function do load test data. This function loads the test data. What it does is when you call this function, okay, it will create the object of test data over here to new XML test data, and test it. When you call this constructor, which is this one, or the function XML test data, right, it will initialize all the variables including the path of the file. Fine. And then you call the function dot load. So it will call the load function which will load the complete XML document in the memory. Right. So what you need to do is that you need to include this JS user extensions.js in IDE. Right. I'll close this and go to remove this one. If you want to add multiple extension files in IDE, you can add them with a separated comma. Okay. I'll add the user extensions. This one. Okay, and I'll restart my IDE. Fine. Now you'll get a function known as load test data. Now this function takes in the name of the test for which the data has to be loaded. The name of the test has to be given as the name over here, login test, which you have given in the XML file, or the create lead test or the delete lead test. Okay, so you give the name as login test. Fine. So you give the name as, say, login test. So what will happen is that when you run this code, everything runs, it is in green. That means the data is successfully loaded for the login test. Fine. Suppose let's implement this test case, login test. I'll save this file. I'll save this file as login test only. Okay, so what will happen? This will load the data for the login test. Then you can write a while loop, while, and you can give the command as test data dot eof. Hold on, let me write it and then I'll explain you. And while. Now, what is this test data dot eof? EOF, end of file, is a function in my particular extension. It tells you whether you have reached the end of the XML document or not. Okay, so EOF function, what it will do is that it will iterate over each data set, pull out the data, and in the end whether it will return you false or true if you have reached the end of the file. If it will return you, this function will return you false, okay, if you have got at least one data set to execute. It will return you true, that means you have returned it, you have reached the end of the file, right? It will return you true in case you have reached the end of the file, right? So what I'll do is that I'll go to IDE and I'll put a not sign, that till the time you have not reached the end of the file, continue this while loop, and in every iteration print, suppose I have to print the username. Okay, right. So all these tags, they are stored in a stored var variables in the XML logic which I have used. If you have to print the username, then you have to write over here command like this, the tag name echo $username. Right. So when you run this code, it will print the usernames. Let me run it. You see that it will print Selenium Training 10 at gmail.com, and then in the end it will print qtp selenium at gmail.com. It's printed both the usernames which were there in this XML file. If I will introduce one more test data, okay, with one more username, fine, and if I run this, see, it prints all three of them. Okay, so no matter whether the test data is increasing or decreasing, it will read the test data tag automatically. All you need to do is that you need to load the data and then check whether you have reached the end of the data or not. EOF basically means end of the data. So $username will give you the user ID. Okay, and you can also print something like this, $password. Okay, right. And when you run this, you will see that user ID and password for every iteration would be printed. Okay, so this means that with this you can run the um, login test multiple times with different user IDs and passwords. Okay, right. And you know what happens is that sometimes you don't want to run the test case with certain username and password. For example, I will keep another tag over here. Call it as run mode. Okay, right. Run mode yes means that you have to execute the code with this data set, and run mode no means that you don't need to execute the code with this data set. So when you run it, automatically script will read the run mode, it will execute the login test with this data set, and it will skip the login test with this data set. Now how do you use that? You'll have to use go to if command over here. Okay, right, you'll have to put some label or something over here. Okay, so what you will do is that you will write it something like this. That is while, okay, the test data is executing, you'll give a command go to if some condition. What is the condition? The condition is that the run mode tag should be equal to yes, only then you have to execute it, right? So what I'll do is that I'll write dollar the value of run mode tag is equal to no, right? Look, you have to write in double quotes. When you are comparing strings, the strings have to be compared with double quotes. Okay, run mode will be read as a string, so you have to give the condition in double quotes that if the run mode is set to no, then you'll have to go to the label skip execution, skip exec, right? So in the end of the while loop, I'll make a label known as skip execution, and in the target I can keep it just like this, and probably I can just leave it like this, and I can delete it, and over here I can write echo successfully executing test. So what will happen is that it will run. If the run mode comes out to be no, it will go to this label and then end while loop and then again continue the loop. So the basic in between lines, these two lines will not be executed. Okay, right. So if I run this, I'll clear the logs and I will run this. Type error handler is undefined. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. This should have been label skip. Sorry, that's what I was thinking. I'm doing something wrong. So it should be label skip. So when you run it, now if you look at the output, you will see that it runs, it is successfully executing for Selenium Training 10 and pass 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you look at the data, this has got the run mode yes, so it will run it for this. But for the next set of data when it runs, okay, it never prints that it is successfully executing or something. It just goes to this label, right? So it skips one of the executions, right? So this is again a very important thing, that is you can simply skip a certain iteration and you can execute a certain iteration of the test case. Okay, now what you can do is that you can introduce the code in between. Okay, the code which will log you inside the website salesforce.com, right? So how will you do that? Okay, let me talk about that now. Let me go into the recording mode. I'll start recording from this line. I'll click on this line and I'll write and I'll give the command salesforce.com, so it will go to the home page. So I've kept the control on this line. I've clicked on this line so that the recording starts from here. Okay, and then you click on the login link, enter some username, enter some password and click on the login button. So what will happen is that it will record all the steps, right, and select window. Now you can remove it, and instead of that you can give the command open, and target is line, that is go to the home page, click on this, click on another link, enter user ID password, and click on the login button, right. So I'll delete after this. Now how will you validate the login? I'll talk about that. Okay, let us see whether it executes or not. Fine, so it will execute only for one data set. For the second data set, which is this one, it should skip, it should not execute, right. So when I run this code, it's going to Salesforce. Fine, it's going to the home page. Look, the home page of Salesforce, it takes a little while to load, so you'll have to be a little patient. Okay, now in the logs also you see it's printing that it is executing. Yeah, it's executed, right. It is executing the test. Only thing is that I have hard coded the data, which I will simply substitute with the username. I'll substitute with dollar username, and password I'll substitute with dollar password. Okay, right. So it will enter user ID password, click on the login button. Fine. Now after clicking on the login button, you have to validate if the login is done or not. Okay, now we have the fourth particular parameter in the test, which says the expected result, that whether the login should be success or whether the login should be failure. Okay, right. So what we will do is that, let me keep the run mode, or run mode no for one. I'll keep the yes for both of them in the end, right. So what I'll do is that I will keep a condition over here. Again, go to if condition, right. I will write go to if, right, if in case, capital I, it's case sensitive, right, in case the value of dollar, you can keep the parameter as expected result, right, in case the expected result is login pass. Okay, in case you have the expected result as a pass, fine, or login success, not pass, login success, right. In that case you will go to the label success. Okay, so I will add a new command, few new commands over here. Let me do it, then I will tell you the logic, right. So go to the label success. Over here I will mark my label as success, alright, and then I will give a command as wait for element present. You will check the presence of certain element on the web page. Say, for example, if I am successfully logged in into the website, okay, I give a valid user ID and password, and if I am successfully logged in into the website, then I will wait for, say, this particular link, take a tour of Salesforce, which has got this XPath. Okay, so I'll give this XPath over here. In case of success, right, you wait for this particular element to be present. So the control will directly jump over to success line. Else, if it is not success, the control will jump to this particular line which I have kept blank. Okay, so if this condition is matched, the control will jump to this success label, this one. Otherwise, it will come up to this blank line. If it comes up to this blank line, that means that expected result is login failure. In that case, I will write over here the condition to check a failure. Wait for, look, obviously if you are giving a wrong user ID and password, okay, right, then you have to expect that you should not be able to log in. That is your expected result, right? So you will wait for the error message. Fine. If I go to Salesforce and hold on, just a minute. If I go to login screen and if I enter invalid user ID and password, I get this message. This message has got the XPath as ID error. So in that case, I will wait for this element, okay, and I'll validate this condition, and then I don't want to validate this label for success, because you know what happens in IDE. Let us consider two situations. One situation in which the expected result is login success. In that condition, the control will go on this line. It will go on this success line, and it will check for the presence of the element which comes up after logging in, right? In case the login is coming, expected result is login failure, so it will not go over here. It will execute this line. It will check the presence of this link or text. If it is not present, it will fail the test. If it is present, it will pass it. But the next line it's going to execute is this line, which we don't want. The labels, they get executed in a serial way. It's just not that you have to just call it. If the label is in the next line, it will get executed, right? So you'll have to insert a new command. Oops, just a minute. You will have to insert a new command over here. Go to the point label skip. Sorry. What does this mean? That go to this particular line, skip execution. It will not actually skipping, but it will actually go on to this particular line, right? Okay, so if it is not able to find this particular XPath which is mentioned here, right, it will fail, and then it will probably go over here on skip. Even if it is able to find, then also it will reach here. It will not validate the successful scenario. Okay, right. So let me do one thing. Let me keep the run modes of both the iterations to yes. Fine, and run this test. Now this is one of the major disadvantages of IDE. You cannot just generate logs in external files. You cannot you can say generate HTML reports and all. Okay, right. That's why we prefer using WebDriver. Right. This is just a small script, but complicated to the nth level. All right. All right. So, but before I run it, just a minute. Okay. This has to be a dollar. There has to be a dollar over here. You are reading a value of a variable. Okay. Right. Now I'll run this script on Salesforce. Okay. I'll run it and it starts running. Right. So it will run for both the iterations, because both the iterations have the run mode yes. And if you open the website Salesforce, hold on, this website actually takes a little while to load. So see, it enters the first set of user ID and password, and the expected result over here is success. So it goes, it skips this line. This line out here is not executed, right? So it is now waiting for the element to be present, which is the header element, and it will take a little time. So that line also I think is a success now. Okay, there is some network connection issue or something. Yeah, it's able to find it. Okay, and wait for element is passing. Now it's executing for the next row of data, right? So it will execute now. So what it will do, it will check for this error message, because the second set of data is actually not a valid data, and the test will pass for this as well, right? So this is how you can implement the simplest test, which is the login test, with the help of IDE. Let me go ahead and implement the other test cases. Right, so it's working. The open function over here, it failed. The flow doesn't stop if the open fails up, because that website took a lot of time to actually load, but the other tests, they got executed. Right, see, this line got executed. This line got executed because the login success was not the expected result, so that's why it checked out for the error message. Fine. Okay, now let's move ahead. Let's look at other test cases inside Salesforce, like we had discussed creation of a lead, deletion of a lead. Okay, how do you manage varying components on the web page and all. Okay, let's discuss that in the next part. Fine. Look, that is why, we have got keyword driven framework or the hybrid framework. These frameworks are in the same line as IDE only, but the only thing is that the keyword driven framework and all these frameworks, they help us to make very dynamic scripts which are better than IDE. Okay, so in the next part over here, I will be discussing about the other test cases. Okay, all right.